Hello and welcome to this episode of the Seniorship. My name is Paul Godwin, and today I am talking with one of my colleagues, Michael MacMahon. We will be talking specifically around the subject of grandfatherhood. Michael is grandfather to his 3-year-old grandson, Raphael, and they seem to have a very rich relationship. As you'll see from this interview, Michael has made a fair amount of effort to make sure that he is involved in Raphael's life, and his story is a fascinating one. So we touch on a little bit of Michael's backstory, and then most of the interview is talking about his relationship with Raphael. Stick around, hope you enjoy it, and if you like Michael, be aware that he carries out most of our interviews. So look out for other seniorship interviews. Thank you. Enjoy the chat. And welcome listeners to the Seniorship. My name is Paul Godwin, and today we're doing something rather different. We are exploring the joys and the meaning of grandfatherhood, and we're doing that with the founder of the Seniorship podcast, a gentleman who you will well know by the name of Michael MacMahon, and Michael is joining us now. Michael, it's lovely to have you here.
Good to be here, Paul.
Before we talk about your grandson, let's start with you and your story. Who are you and what shaped you?
Oh my God, what shaped me? Well, I suppose I'd have to make a long list really of the things, every now and then it's useful, it's example or exercise, isn't it? To make a list of what people and what situations shaped us. And people from school days onwards, Paul, you being a rugby man will appreciate the fact that I still remember my rugby coach at primary school. My primary school played rugby, so I still remember him in detail. Teachers at school who influenced me in a good way, and that was wonderful. I can't remember too much of my university lecturers, so that tells you I wasn't a born chemist because I studied chemistry for reasons I won't bore you with. But and then bosses over the years, the ones, I'm sure you've been there, there were some bosses over the years that inspired you and some that didn't, some that were just doing the job and some that really you'd want to run through a brick wall for because they were just great people. So bit of that. Again, going back to a rugby metaphor, I used to play at a pretty mediocre level for some good clubs, but at a mediocre level, mostly in the junior teams. But every now and then you'd go on Easter tour, and on the Easter tour, all bets were off. And because a lot of people would be drunk a lot of the time, people who wouldn't normally have a right to be in the first team would end up in the first team. And so that happened to me 2 or 3 times with one of my favourite clubs, Ealing, which is now sort of top of the championship sort of side. But then it was an amateur club, and I played in the first team several times on tour. And you know what? I played out of my skin, and I compliments from people that I'd looked up to all my time in that club, and it made me realise in that activity and many others, if you work with people who are better than you, you're going to improve. And so I think that is knowing that has shaped me. So I like dealing with people who are better than I am or brighter than I am. For example, the old cliche: if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. I'm such a believer in that philosophy. So I think that has shaped me to somebody. Obviously, my parents shaped me. I had a very happy childhood. So so the number is too long to list, Paul.
Okay. And what is also clear is that all these people, parents, primary school, rugby coaches, colleagues within rugby couldn't get a word in edgeways, could they? Let's talk a little bit about your career. What kind of work did you do? Every day a school day for me. I've learned about your chemist background, but what kind of work did you do?
Well, because I wasn't a great chemist, I decided, well, I've learned enough to work in the chemical industry, but research and development wasn't going to be the area which I would excel. So I work on the commercial side. So therefore, I was in sales and marketing and later sales management. So yeah, for maybe 30 odd years, I worked in the chemical industry, mostly big companies, in sales and sales management. So that's what I did. Then later, by the way, did I pause there? I think I did. Later, I got an opportunity to start my own training business, a training and consulting business, which I did, and I quite enjoyed that. But I realized after about 5 years, during which it went well, I realized that actually I work better in large organizations with other people around. Running your own one-man business, and that's what it was for me, is a lonely business. And you've got to have rather more focus and more drive than I had. So therefore, I'm someone who works well in organizations, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's something that resonates with quite a few of us. Yeah. So what was that turning point though in your professional life you've talked about the turning point from the big corporate world to working for yourself in a training company.
Yes.
But at the end of your training career, what was the switch there? Was that purely time? Was that retirement? What was the switch there?
Well, the first turning point basically was that when I started the training and consulting business, it was with the support of a big company. It was a company that had taken over the one I worked for. So I worked for a Swedish company for 20 plus years. Terrific, excellent, wonderful colleagues, etc. So enjoyed the Swedes very much. You enjoyed visiting there. Never lived in Sweden. And then we were taken over by a competitor. And then I worked for the competitor for 2 or 3 years. And then they said, look, we haven't got a job for you at your level unless you move to Norway, because I've been MD of the subsidiary of the UK subsidiary of the Swedish company. And they said, well, look, we already have a boss of our subsidiary in the UK. We can give you a job at your level if you move to Norway. But I didn't want to do that because I had split up from my wife at that time. We're talking early 90s. And therefore I thought, well, if I move to Norway, I will rarely see my children. And so I wasn't going to do that. So they said, alternatively, you could start your own business because we have a lot of work for you. We could start your own business and we will hire you as a consultant. And so they gave me a consultancy contract for, I think, 3 years to start with, and then it rolled over and rolled over. That was great. So in other words, I started a one-man band, but I had the comfort blanket of a deal with a big company. Then after about 5 years or so, pretty well everyone that needed training in the fields that I was working in, and this was, they said we need training in communication skills in English language, because our people, we're international, so English is the company language. And Swedes and Norwegians, and many of their employees were Swedes or Norwegians, their grasp of the grammar is very good. It's better than most Brits, frankly, Paul. But confidence in speaking is another matter. So therefore, that's what I would deliver training courses on. So I did that. Then it got to a point where everyone who needed training had been trained, and then work was harder to find. So to summarize it, basically, I am the eternal optimist. So I just assumed if I carry on working hard and working smart, things will pick up, and they didn't. And as a result, and I was spending money still at the rate it had been before, still traveling a lot. So what happened was, and I'm no secret of this because I've written a book about it, I got into debt. I got into serious debt. And so I actually got to the point of being advised by my accountant to go bankrupt, to declare bankruptcy. And he said, you have a very good opportunity to go bankrupt now. And I said no to that, and I had to rethink my life. So, and I wrote a book about it. So
Very
then I
good.
became an author. So that was an important turning point.
It was, and I think we need to have another session where we talk purely about that book, perhaps. Okay, let's go on to the main topic of the day, right? Which
Yes.
is hopefully a bright spot. Um, do you remember how you felt when you first found out you were going to become a grandfather?
Well, I felt great because my two daughters are the lights of my life, and always have been. And I still remember when they were born. Of course, I do, really. And I still remember also at the time when my wife was pregnant, when my first daughter was being expected, a friend of mine, a business associate, a Danish guy, a real playboy, a drinker. He said to me, he said, when the baby is born, you will phone me. I will come over to England. I will drink with you. Because he said, I still remember the minute when my first child was born, you think that nothing can kill you. And I thought, what a wonderful way to put it. And this
Yes.
was a guy, he was such a playboy. I wasn't even aware he even had a family. But knowing that my wife was pregnant, he came up with that, which is wonderful. So, yeah, to summarize, my two girls were the lights of my life. To discover that, yes, and I was a late entrant to the grandparenting stage. I was 80, approaching 80, 79 when I found
Wow.
out. So yeah, it was fabulous. It really was, because I'd heard from so many friends of mine who were grandparents how good it is.
And thinking back to that time when you were anticipating becoming a grandfather, were there any trepidatious feelings, or were there any feelings, or were you thinking back to when you had your children, and whether or not there were any lessons you could learn from being a young father, or not a young father, but from being a new father to being a new grandfather, is what I meant to say.
Well, of course, yes. I hoped I would make a decent job of it. I hoped I would make a decent job of it. Unfortunately, I knew that because of the age I was, I wasn't going to be able to do some of the things that grandparents are expected to do, like playing football and stuff like that, or rugby. But I
Are
would have.
grandparents expected to do that, do you think? So
Well,
this is interesting, Michael. So already you have some expectations of what being a grandfather should be.
yes,
Are you already putting pressure on yourself?
yes, absolutely, yes, and it's pressure you in a way you want, don't you? Really, because if without pressure, we wouldn't get out of bed, would we? Really, at
Exactly.
least a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, even today, if we're outside in the garden, he suddenly will say, "Chase me." And of course, I will chase him. But nowadays, because he's now 3, and nowadays I know I can't catch him.
Well, you do what I remember doing with my two, which is you say to them, and you probably did with your two, when you've had enough chasing, you just go, see how long it takes you to run to that tree and back.
Yes.
Oh,
That's a
very
good
good.
one.
Now see if you can go faster. Do it again.
Yes.
um,
And I'll
okay.
sit there and time you. I'll sit there
Yes,
and time you. Exactly.
exactly. So, there are ways around this. Okay. Tell us about your grandson. What's he like?
Well, of course, uh, you'd be surprised if I didn't say he's a
Yeah.
genius, and
Yeah.
he's a very lovable child. Well, I say that because I love him. He is very most of the time, 99% of the time, he's a very contented child, which I'm very pleased to see. And he's everybody told me this, and it's true. At that age, and he's just past his 3rd birthday now, they're like sponges. So every time I see him, and I might see him 2 or 3 times a week typically,
Oh, wow.
because
That's quite a lot.
it is quite a lot, and I'm pleased about it, and that's the reason I moved. to Birmingham, where I live now, from Bristol, where, as you know, I'd lived for many, many years. And our good friend Tim, being a Bristolian, was always happy to hear that Bristol was the best place I'd ever lived up to that point. And I had scores of friends there. But I moved to Birmingham because that's where my daughter and son-in-law were living. And I thought, well, I don't want to miss out on this stage of his early development. So yes, I knew that there were certain things as a nearly 80-year-old granddad that I perhaps wouldn't be so good at, but I knew also that I would be quite good at the bedtime story stuff because I liked stories, I liked reading stories, and I'd done a fair bit of acting over the years in my sort of, extracurricular life.
Yeah. Yes, indeed you have. And you are a very good raconteur. You've written books on after dinner speaking.
Yes.
It's something you are known for. And as our listeners will hear now, one of us has a very mellifluous and professionally trained voice, and one of us doesn't.
Well, listen,
So,
it's very kind of you to say that, and I'd be very happy for you to say it again if you wanted to. But it's not a trained voice. It's not a trained voice. It's just stuff that I did, in Amdram and all that kind of thing, and all that kind of. And by the way, you said I've written a book about after dinner speaking. I haven't, although maybe I should. I've written a book about wedding speeches.
Yeah, that's true. So it's sort of during and after breakfast. Okay, let's go back to your grandson. You don't have to share his name. Are you happy to tell us what his name is?
Oh, his name is Raphael, and
There
in
we go.
fact, that is in the public domain because I have, as you know, I have a couple of other podcasts as well as Seniorship, and the latest one, and in a way my favorite one, is called Story Time with Raphael and Grandad, in which I
Fantastic.
simply record stories I'm reading for him.
Now, do you feel Raphael knows you well? Does he know which buttons to press for Grandad? And you are Grandad, aren't you?
I'm Grandad. At first, I
Yeah.
didn't want to be called Grandad because the of that ghastly song by Clive
Okay.
Dunn. But then I realized that actually he would call me what he wants to call me, and Granddad is easier to say than Grandpa.
Yeah.
Something to do with this, the consonants. Granddad. Well, does he know me? I bet he does. I bet he does, and because he is a sharp cookie, and he's an enthusiast, which I love. And okay, I suppose probably most kids of that age are, if we're lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and what's your bond like? We've talked about it from your point of view. When he turns up, is he excited to see Grandad? Does he
Well,
know?
he either is excited or he puts on a good show of being
Well,
excited.
he's excited. I don't think they're at the age of being disingenuous at just turned 3. All right, that's great to hear about Raphael. Now, what I am conscious of is there's a lot I want to ask you about Raphael and grandparenthood, but our listeners may want to go and have a quick cup of tea. So let's take a very short break. You and I will do the same, and we'll be back here in a minute. And welcome back. And I'm still here with Michael MacMahon. We've both had a quick cup of tea or splash of water or whatever it is we've been doing. And we're about to continue with Michael talking about his relationship with his grandson, Raphael, who's just turned 3. And the reason we're talking about this is Michael and I were due to have a meeting a few weeks ago, if that, and we moved the day because Michael was taking a day out on the Severn Valley Railway with his grandson, and I think his grandson's parents, or one of them. One of them. And I never asked him about the day properly. So you recently spent this day with Phil on the Severn Valley Railway. Tell us about the Severn Valley Railway, because that's interesting. And what was the day like?
The day was wonderful. The Severn Valley Railway runs from Kidderminster, which is, I don't know, maybe 20 miles to the west of Birmingham, where I live, and runs northwards roughly to a place called Bridgnorth. and it's a journey of maybe an hour and 10 minutes, something like that. Half a dozen stations in between, a museum halfway at the halfway point, which is called the Engine House, which is full of old steam engines, beautifully restored steam engines that just sit there. And the trains, mostly a fair number of them are steam engine, hauled by steam engines. But because we've had such a dry summer, some of them are diesel to reduce the risk of trackside fires. I've been on quite a few heritage railways, which is the technical term, and this I think is one of the best, partly because they have taken a lot of trouble not only to have beautifully restored steam engines, but also beautifully restored coaches, really old coaches. For example, we travelled in a coach that was teak, made of teak, as some coaches used to be in, say, the 1920s. So I really like that railway, and also it's volunteer run, and so the people who are dealing with you they're enthusiastic and they're fun people, and they're there because they want to be there. It's a wonderful, of the many heritage railways in Britain, and we seem to be we're all mugs for nostalgia, are we not?
We are.
In this country, yeah. It strikes me as one of the best, and so it was. I knew it'd be good. I've been on it a couple of times before with my daughter, funnily enough. My elder daughter has been on, just me, before Raphael was born. And then we've been again after Raphael was born. So this was his second trip, but he was old enough now to appreciate it. And my gosh, he did. He really did.
Is it a full gauge railway? It's not a narrow gauge railway, is
No,
it?
it's a so-called standard gauge railway. Yeah, it was
Okay.
part of the network.
And so you pick up the train at Kidderminster and you go to Bridgnorth. Do you then come back? So do you do the whole
Well,
3 hours, or?
yes, that's what we did. Yes, we got there. We had a little wander around Bridgnorth. We had some lunch in a pub, and we came back. Now there are other things we could have done, but we decided that would make the day too long for
Yeah,
him, really.
yeah.
And
That's a
so
long day.
it is a long day, exactly. That's right. So we had a couple of hours in Bridgnorth. Bridgnorth is unique for being a town on two levels, separated by a cliff, and there is a cliff railway separating the two, which is wonderful. Victorian cliff railway, and on another occasion we might have gone on that, but we decided no, that would make the day too long, so we didn't. We could see it, but we didn't go on it.
So there you are, giving ideas to me and our listeners for
Yes.
days out in Bridgnorth. Was there a moment in the day, Michael, that really stood out for you? So a year or two from now, when you look back on that day, what's the image that'll come into your head?
Well, I suppose. Well, I mean, bonding with your children and with your grandchildren is a thing. It's hard to define, isn't it? Really, but you know it when it happens. And so, for example, when we got off the train and we were walking into town, we got to walk across quite an elevated bridge over a gorge, you might say, really, because Bridgnorth is very hilly. And so it was quite important to me. I'm not good with heights, so it's quite important to me to make sure that one or other of us held his hand all the way across that bridge, although the bridge was very well protected. But it was really nice to see that, at the age of 3, etc., he would hold my hand with no hesitation, not try and pull away. Although he's an enthusiastic and energetic kid, he knew he'd got to behave himself. So that was a terrific part of it. It really was.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because what, looking back, and of course this is me, and the sample of one is extremely dangerous, but I look back on memories with my own children. I don't have grandchildren, and for any days such as that, there are little flashes of images and things like holding a hand or whatever. When it happens, you don't think I'm going to remember this moment. But as the years go by, you suddenly think, oh, that was the moment I remember. I don't remember anything else from the day, really. I know we were there. I remember doing I'm thinking one to the north Yorks Railway, or the railway in Yorkshire, which is a steam railway, which is quite famous and has
Oh,
been.
the North York Moors.
Is it right? And we've done that, and I have a memory of my son, my younger son, who's now in his 30s, with an ice cream cone that he'd almost finished, and he stuck it on. He was about 7, and he put it on the end of his chin, so he looked like a pharaoh. And at the time, I'm thinking, you get ice cream on your shirt, and while you're doing that, I'm going to have to wipe that off and all of this. But over the years, that's the one thing I remember from that day. It's very funny. How do you think young Raphael experienced that day?
Well, well, the thing is, yes, of course, it was what I'm describing to you is bonding between him and me, but also his dad was there. Now, his mum wasn't because she was working, but his dad was there because his dad has his own business, so he can take time off during the day, obviously, because he's his own boss, and the good boss he is too. And so his dad was there. So I, unusually for me, took lots of pictures of the two of them fooling around together on the train on the way back. And I dare say, and he was having great fun with his dad and pulling his ears and stuff like that. And I took loads of photographs, which must mean, because I don't do a lot of that, it must mean that I realized that was important. And particularly because my son-in-law is usually the one who takes photographs. He takes loads of photographs. He's very good at doing selfies of a group that he's part of and all this kind of thing, which, people of his generation tend to be. I took loads of pictures because I realized that's an important part of the day. And the nice thing is this, I would enjoy it. I knew my grandson would enjoy it, but his dad also did. And his dad, I'm pretty sure he's never been on that railway. He's never been on the Heritage Railway. He's a car man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something's just come into my head, and we're told. I know we're not told. It's when we think about our own earliest memories. Often they're around the age of 3 or 4, and we're not quite sure when they're from. But certainly from our first 3 or 4 years, we don't remember a great deal. And I remember somebody saying to me, I don't know why we do this with the babies and take them out to see the animals or something when they were kids were like 1. They're not going to remember any of this. And actually, that's not the point. The point is you'll remember it, but also, even though they don't remember what's happening and what's going on that particular day, they know that they were in a safe, loving place with people that cared for them. And at a subliminal level, that's in there. They feel secure and loved and entertained and supported and all of those things. So whilst they won't remember it, the effect of it is in them.
Well put, Paul.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so let's take a turn into the home straight. And I want to talk more about those sort of things. What do you get from this relationship? You've moved to Birmingham, you're spending more time with Raphael, you clearly enjoy it, but what do you get from it? Can you remember life before him? And how is your life different now, and in what ways is it better?
Well, yes, it is different. It is better. In what ways? Well, I know that I am with stuff that I know I'm good at, which is telling stories, reading stories. I don't make up stories. There are so many good stories around written by people who are far better at it than I am. So I know exactly who are the authors I will go for. I will go for
P.D.
people that
James.
Sorry?
P.D. James.
Precisely. Yes, A.A. Milne features because I knew his stuff from my daughters were small. I remember his stuff from when I was small, Winnie the Pooh, and when we were very young, and now we are 6, all those. And so, yes, he features. The Reverend W. Awdry features, Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
But of the current ones, and maybe better still, there's somebody called Julia Donaldson, who is in a league of her own, as far as I can see, in terms of the way her stories are engaging. Very often they're in rhyme, which helps, of course, memory, as we know. Or if they're not in rhyme, they'll scan. So I love all that. And the nice thing is, very often he now likes stories that his mother liked when she was small, and I read to his mother, and so
Okay.
that's a terrific thing.
But okay, well, picking up on that, how does the relationship you have with him differ from that of a parent? So when looking back on your relationship with his mother at that age and your relationship with him at this age, well, what's the key difference? I mean, there's an obvious one that it's not 24/7, but
Yes, you hit it on the
but then
head
you
there.
were at work all day, so it wasn't
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah. Oh,
24/7
I know.
then. But
I know. You'd probably have to ask a grandmother,
yeah, but I'm asking
what's the
you.
difference between
I'm
now
asking
and
you, what's the difference?
all right, okay. Well, for me, it's the old cliche that all my grandfatherly friends have said. You know, it's wonderful. You have fun with them, and then you hand them back, sort of thing. You know, so that's a cliche. And from a selfish point of view, that's the big plus. But I very much appreciate the fact that my daughter, i.e., his mum, uh, always asks me, "Are you free to babysit on such and such a date?" And always say, "Oh, great, thanks a lot, thanks a lot." I have friends who, by contrast, it seems their life is ruled by their grandchildren. You know, sorry, I can't do X, Y, Z that we'd arranged to do because I'm babysitting, or I'm doing because I'm going with grandchild to do such and such a thing. And it didn't seem as if they were consulted very much in the decision. So I'm lucky in that regard, Paul.
Yeah, okay. And has Raphael taught you anything about yourself?
Oh,
What have you learned about Michael in the last 3 years?
oh, starting with easy ones, eh?
Yeah,
Um, uh, no, there must be something. There must be something.
is there anything
Well,
around? Are you more or less patient than you thought you were?
no, I'm fairly patient with him, really. Oh, yeah, of course, of course. Even though he's a very good boy, as the saying
Yeah,
goes. Like every now and then he'll throw a wobbly, and I hope I'm, luckily his one of his parents is always with us when that happens. What I've not done yet actually is spend time with him on my own, Paul,
yeah,
and I suppose in a way, uh, the fact that I have not invited that possibility tells me something, which is I would be scared witless of losing him.
really,
Yes,
really.
I would. I would. In a way, even more so than with my own children. I don't know, because kids at that age, they move fast, and if he took it on his into his head to run off somewhere, if we were in a shop or a shopping center or whatever it was, took it and he was feeling particularly
Yeah,
devilish, so to speak, ran off, I'd struggle to keep up with him. Therefore, it would really worry me. So I have not invited those opportunities. Perhaps I should have done, but I haven't. So
yeah.
that's telling me something about myself.
Well, look, it far be it from me as a non-grandfather, to tell a grandfather how to grandparent. I mean, maybe, you know, it, the opportunity may arise to look after him in his own home without his parents, maybe at
Oh
some
yes,
point,
yes, yeah, that's
and see
happened.
how that
Yes,
goes. And with all the doors locked and closed, yeah, yeah. But maybe, well, he's going to grow up a lot in the next year as well. So,
oh, he's already doing it. Yes,
so let's just think back to your own grandfathers. Did you
yes.
know them?
I didn't know my paternal grandfather. I only met him once or twice, because he lived a long way away, and I think I met him, yeah, maybe twice. He died in about 63. And my maternal grandfather, I knew a little bit, and this old the saying, "What's your earliest memory?" One of my earliest memories is walking along with him in the driveway of his house, which was in West Wales, in Pembrokeshire, in the driveway of his house, and he would always walk in a very stately way, because as we know, grandfathers were older in those days than they are
They
now.
they
He'd
were.
always say, and he would always have his hands clasped behind his back, and I would do exactly the same.
Oh, very Prince Philip.
Now, whether that's because I remember doing it or because my parents told me I did it, but I always did that.
That's quite a sweet thing. That's quite
Hmm.
sweet. It's
Mm.
interesting when you say that grandparents were older in those days. I look back at my grandfather. Well, there's one I sort of remember in flashes, but there's one I knew quite well. He died when I was in my early mid-20s, 23, 24. But I remember thinking was old from day one, and he must have only been 48, 49, maybe even 50 when if that, when, oh no, he'd have been very early 50s, but to me, he was an old man. He had
Well,
white hair from an early age. You know,
absolutely,
it's what
absolutely.
it is.
Well, I've as you see,
You look like a grandpa. You look like a grandfather or a granddad or a grandpa or a papa or whatever. Okay.
absolutely. I'm thinking of getting a stick to ensure that I always get a seat on the bus or tube or whatever it is.
Okay, we are on the home straight now. What do you? This is a tough one, I think. So I'll give you a second to think of it. What do you hope Raphael remembers about you as he grows older? When he looks back on Granddad Michael.
Well, he'll remember probably Granddad Mike, because my son always
Yeah,
calls me Mike. But what he'll remember, qualities he'll remember, I hope he remembers that even though I was pretty ancient, I was enthusiastic and supportive, and that I was fair. Well, I think that's not a problem, because I don't generally have to get involved in the situations where fairness comes into it. But I hope he's going to remember I was enthusiastic and fair, and that I was someone who encouraged him. Yeah,
okay.
because that's so important, isn't it, really? We've all been in those situations, have we not? In our schoolwork, playing rugby, or whatever it was, really, when you needed encouragement.
Yeah,
And those times, I still remember them. Times, going back to rugby again, where somebody I respected, one of the elder statesmen of the club, would say, "Oh, you played a really good game there." You think, that encourages you, and you want to do it the next time, don't you?
yeah.
Well, I hope that he remembers that about me too, in different
I think
areas.
that's a lovely thing to have if he does remember that, and I'm sure he will. Okay. And what would you say to somebody who's about to become a grandfather for the first time?
I would say, well, aren't you lucky? Because it's going to
Yeah,
be wonderful.
it's
And it is. And it absolutely is.
that's absolutely lovely, and I think it's a perfect spot to end. Michael, thank you for sharing your story and Raphael's story, and long may it continue. Maybe even to the point where you are reading P.D. James to him. Who knows?
Thank you,
Michael,
Paul.
thank you. I'm going to hand back the microphone to you for future interviews, and you can be on this side of the desk.
It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Have a good
Thank you,
day, and have a
Paul.
good day, everybody else. Bye bye.
Bye bye.